I am by my nature a solitary creature, a loner who occasionally wants company. Naturally introverted, but occasionally aided by a depression deepening to the point where I become scarce. Really good friends of mine will go months without hearing from me. I was at a party with my coworkers and friends during the course of this year. I realized that I was the odd man out. At one point I asked the question, where does that leave me? I forgot the context, but the answer that came back was, a loner, as you always are. Even in my somewhat drunken state, the remark stung, because of the truth behind it. It's not always clear that I want to be a loner. It's not always clear that I am happy that way. My depression has no doubt affected my relationships with everyone around me. I've even lost people that meant the world to me along the way because of it. In 2013, the lead up to my marriage blowing apart, I fell into a hideous depression and started having problems similar to when I originally discovered I had anxiety problems, only 3 years before. This was not the only reason for my failed marriage, but it no doubt was a huge contributor to its decline. Along with my marriage, it also helped to kill off one of my 20-year friendships. Again, there was more to things than that, but it didn't help. Which leads us to something I brought up when we first met. My codependent issues. I brought it up but never explained. Codependency is defined as excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner, typically a partner who requires support due to an illness or addiction. I am an addict. My addictions manifest in different ways, but most notably, I am a technology addict. Specifically, my overuse of my phone, which in some respects isn't unique to me. In a lot of ways, we are all addicts now. I've used my phone and social media the same way an alcoholic or a drug addict will do, as a means to escape from reality, to numb the pain and not think about the state of my life. I essentially substitute the online relationships for real relationships. The people I'm dating are the ones that always have my attention, even in my darkest moments. My friends have gotten the shaft in the past, hence why I now have far fewer friends. I didn't understand any of this until after my marriage blew apart. A good friend of mine named Jill at the time handed me a piece of paper that would describe me, that might as well have been about me. It was a piece of paper about codependency, and that's when I really truly began to understand myself. My depression and anxiety were not my biggest problems. They were just the symptoms of a larger problem. Since that time, I've been approaching my life in two different ways. Trying to fix my mess, which has had mixed results, as you've seen, and essentially trying to cure myself of my codependency, also with mixed results. I have tried to live my life less in the social media realm and tried to live it more in reality. The only thing is, my reality is depressing. Thanks to a lifetime of mismanaging my life and mismanaging my relationships, I have a long mountain to climb. My attempts to get myself back out there and to truly live my life yielded results last year, before things went off the rails. Aided by my cousin Rachel, I indeed became more social. I partially credit this time in my life for Adam and Stacy becoming a couple. I even had a dating life. I was seeing Kate for a couple months last year, before she backed off because she thought she was distracting me from my goals. Which led into Crystal, which is a story I no longer wish to tell. It didn't quite end when I told you it did. Much to my surprise, it kept going. It actually led to a date that didn't go well. And then things descended from there, unfortunately, to depressing places. I won't say more than that, lest I get myself into further trouble. But really, I had no business going on a date. Not with my mindset being what it was. Not with my anxiety and depression acting up to the 9th degree. Not with my situation being what it was. This is pathetic. It's so pathetic, it's not even funny. Actually, it kinda is funny. I was thinking with my heart, and not my mind. When the smoke cleared, what I had left was my beautiful daughter, and a car situation to deal with. An uncertain job and living situation. Things had seemingly gotten worse and worse. It was well past time, if I were going to rise from the ashes. Fuck this. It was time to start making things happen. I wasn't so certain that I could pull off the Herculean task, but not doing so would mean the even further ruining of my life, and quite possibly causing my daughter pain, as I would be forced to leave Connecticut. It was now or never. It was time. My relationship with my dad since my parents' divorce was somewhat strained. Much like it was with everybody else, really. It was always something that I wanted to make better. If not for me, then for Julia's sake. Last year I had made headway with my relationship with my family, only for most of that progress to be reversed this year. I was waiting to get my life more in order before reaching out. But I was down to my last strike. I needed help, or I was dead in the water. And so I called him. Dad, hey. Well, I wish I could tell you they were going better, but for now. I have a bit of a car situation. Yeah, it doesn't start. I've tried everything, it's a financial sinkhole at this point. I don't quite have the money together yet, but I was kind of hoping you would help me find something. And then after the conversation, I called my mom. Hey, Mom. It's been a while. I was kind of waiting for something good to tell you, but that hasn't happened. So. How's everything? How's Kristen doing? The last time I had talked to my mom was sometime in February, just before my birthday. I talked to her for a while about my situation and hers, and eventually ended up talking to my sister who is 23 years my junior. The funny thing is, whenever I do talk to her, she reminds me just how much smarter she is than me, and always has been. For a girl that has bounced around a lot in her life, she sure has her head on straight. The most important thing to come out of the conversation with my mom was that things kept going sideways. I had a place to go in Seattle, but that would mean leaving my daughter, which was a painful, painful thought. I would go there on the premise that I could get my life in order and then return to Connecticut to be with her. But I would have absolutely no way of knowing how long that would take me no way of knowing just how much I would miss. I needed to do everything in my power to stay here, to make my life work here. You know, you're almost like a metaphor for my entire life. Won't start. I'm sorry you and I couldn't do great things together. But I have to let you go. I can't keep putting money in you. Maybe you aren't gonna do great things, but I'm hoping I still will. I called the junkyard to sell my car for scrap metal, so I could at least recover something for the car, and put that money towards a new one. And with that, I said goodbye to the Buick LeSabre.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Steven. Happy birthday to you. You were 0 and 2. 0 and 2. No, 0 and 2.
The night of Steven's birthday led to some shenanigans that would have made for a decent comedy episode. Unfortunately, things have grown sour since then, to the point where I no longer really want to tell that story. It was a comedy of errors and miscommunication that led me to hiding. This is pathetic. It's so pathetic, it's not even funny. Actually, it kinda is funny. It's your likeness. Which, rather surprisingly, resulted in a date that, as I said, did not go well. Which led to some drama, and unfortunately, a mistrust of a person that this year I had grown to see as a really good friend. So what seemed like for 2 seconds might actually be a good thing, turned out to be another smack to the face. We cleared the air eventually, but before that, I was even more isolated, even more depressed, and being crushed under the weight of the pressure of my situation. Which is when I would take a trip that would rejuvenate me, that would give me new purpose and new energy. It was the trip with me, Adam, and Julia to New York. So what are we gonna go do, Jules?
See SpongeBob.
You want a pet bear?
The best day ever.
Upon returning from New York, my boss gave me a new deadline of a month and a half to get my own place. I was reasonably convinced that I could meet that deadline. The race was on. Failure meant nothing less than the end of my life in Connecticut, and that I would be departing for Seattle and leaving my daughter behind. At least until I could return to her. But this flat out was not an option for me. I needed to pull this off. The next car needed to be the answer, or I really and truly had failed completely. The good news is that despite the pressure, I had actually returned to myself. I was no longer an anxiety-riddled crazy person like I had been for at least a couple of months. I was Dave again, the Dave I enjoyed being, the Dave I liked being. And of course, Sammy had returned to work with me. That was also good news. Which is when I got an even bigger piece of good news. My dad would match my 1,000, which I was soon to have. Which made everything infinitely more realistic. It was the boost and lifeline that I needed. Not necessarily what I wanted, because what I had wanted was to get this problem solved on my own. But that clearly hadn't been working out. I landed a car, and I felt I could fix everything else.
I'm actually gonna pull this off. Who'd have thunk it?
I was gonna get my paycheck at the end of the week, and from there, on Saturday, I was going to go with my dad to look for cars.
You're gonna do it. You're gonna get a car. Not today, and sometime soon. But you're gonna get a car. You're gonna get out of this situation, this living situation. And then, you're gonna get a new job. You're gonna pull this off, Jane. Yes, you are. Because you are the man.
As it turns out, I would land a car this day, at the very first place that we went to. A 2005 S40 Volvo. I realize that revealing it like that is a tad anticlimactic, but that is nevertheless what happened, and it's far from the end of the story. I still had to resolve my living situation, and I had only 3 weeks to do so. I didn't have the same feeling of triumph that I had when I landed the Buick LeSabre. This time, what I felt was an exhausted relief. I wouldn't have the car for a few days, but at the very least, I would finally have it.
And to think, this might just be the last time I take this walk.
And while I waited for my car, I made peace with Crystal. We cleared the air between us, and we were back on talking terms. Am I over her? Probably never will be. But what I do know is that I would rather have her in my life in some capacity than not at all.
I got really incredibly lucky. I don't know, Julia. That's a good question. Where are we gonna go?
Taking a video of me.
You could be like, you could just do your like, Dave.
Just like say Dave.
Sure.
I feel like I can't act that out because I feel like this is a very genuine, like
I see.
It's a very genuine what I see what I just heard you say.
Okay.
That was a very strange statement.
No, that's fine. That works.